Good morning, everybody. It is raining this morning, so you won't be getting a ramblin' while amblin'. But there are two comments by Perdido Atlantic and Screamin' Jimmy that I found interesting. I find them interesting. And it's not just because they're right together, but that made it very convenient, but they're interesting for two very different reasons. Perdido Atlantic says one argument about deporting illegals is that the illegals will stop communicating crimes with law enforcement. What he's trying to I'm going to give you a little bit of background on that just in case you're unclear. Immigration and the laws surrounding immigration are federal laws, and states don't have to enforce federal laws. The federal government enforces federal laws. That's why there's a lot of that weird area in post offices where the local police will arrest somebody for trespassing instead of arresting someone for violating the CFR, the CFR that shows up in poster 7 about filming in a post office. So what a lot of states have done is they have required, in order to get various funding, I think, from the federal government, they've required their local law enforcement to report illegal aliens to the federal government. And when they arrest an illegal alien for a crime, to hold that person so that after they deal with them, the federal government can then prosecute them and deport them for entering the country illegally. And one side effect of that interaction between the state and the federal government in reporting illegal aliens to the federal government is that there is a belief that illegal aliens will not report crimes to the local law enforcement because they are criminals and they don't want to tell the local law enforcement what is going on because that will expose them to possibly being deported. So he phrased it fairly poorly, but I mean, he did try to make it into one sentence. So, I'll give him that. So with that understanding that the argument is that local law enforcement shouldn't enforce or work with the federal government regarding illegal aliens who report crimes, in order to encourage those illegal aliens to report crimes. That's what we're dealing with. He says the blue line symbol of any kind keeps a very large number of folks from communicating anything with the police who display the gang symbol. Well, I don't believe so, because you're suggesting that this group who is not reporting a crime because they're criminal, and they may be exposed to getting punished for their crime in reporting other crimes, and then you switch over to a very large number of people, citation needed, who won't communicate with the police because of the, in quotes, gang symbol. It doesn't make any sense. I haven't seen anybody scared of the police or the thin blue line flag. I haven't seen anybody. In fact, in the flag codes video that I was responding to, a woman in a wheelchair and a blind man, however blind he is, were confident enough in their rights, in their protection from unlawful police activity, that they filed not one but 2 complaints about the thin blue line flag. And they talked to the county prosecutor. Your argument is lacking, sir. And then he continues on, by the same argument, don't deport illegals. That wasn't the argument. So he doesn't even understand the argument he's talking about. The argument wasn't don't deport illegals, because that's what the federal government does. It's don't report illegals who are reporting crimes to the federal government so that the federal government would then take action. He says the cop flag should go. And I don't believe that is the case. I personally don't think that there is a particularly good reason to not report whatever the police learn to the appropriate authorities. As a nation, we have determined that that there is harm done to our nation by allowing non-citizens to enter the country illegally and to remain in the country illegally. We have decided as a people to do that, and I believe that our law enforcement officials should do what is in their power to effectuate enforcement of that. That's literally in the name, law enforcement. So it's not a good allegory. It's not a good example to use. If the effort by law enforcement is to fight crime, it's to enforce laws. That's why it's called law enforcement. As they say, then they should stop displaying the symbol. But the symbol is actually about, I know you don't like the symbol and you disagree with it, but the symbol is actually representing law enforcement being the thin line between the criminal element and the citizens. That the flag is a symbol of law enforcement fighting crime. And then he says, but we all know, and anytime anybody says, but we all know, you could be pretty much sure that they're full of shit. The police, first and foremost, are about continuing their own for themselves. And I don't think so. I don't think that anybody goes into law enforcement with the intent to become rich. You don't retire as a police officer rich. I don't think people go into firefighting to be rich. I don't think people go into politics to be rich. I think politics is very corrupting. There are corrupting influences on police as well, and I'm sure that there is a non-negligible percentage of officers that do cave into the corruption. But I don't think that the police are first and foremost about themselves, because while reasonable minds can differ as to the willingness of the police to put their own safety on the line for the common man, for the citizens, for the law-abiding public, they do. They do put themselves on the line. When somebody starts firing, when somebody starts a shooting spree, the citizens are running away and the cops are running towards the shooter. That's not first and foremost about continuing your own for yourself. I mean, you're charging at somebody who wants to kill you. So your entire argument is flawed. And he went from a gang symbol in quotes to having it just be the gang symbol unifies police, putting the police above the citizen and enforces police criminality. And that is an assertion that he has provided no support for. So there you go. That's my argument responding to Perdido Atlantic. He likes to think that I don't make points, and I think he's just not smart enough to understand the points that I make. But if this is his idea of making a point, well, I guess I'll never make points. But then we got Screamin' Jimmy, and Screamin' Jimmy actually isn't retarded as far as I can understand. So I actually like where he's going with this, but we'll see where he snafus it a bit. He says, it's okay to rant, but I totally disagree with you. Assholery is the genesis to many Supreme Court decisions. I never, ever stated that assholery wasn't the genesis to Supreme Court opinions or other court opinions. What my statement is that the public will respond to being an asshole. They will take steps to make that kind of behavior illegal, to punish people for that type of behavior. But but I still want to reward Screamin' Jimmy because he gave me a case. Oh my God, I love cases. I mean, could there be a bigger asshole than the Westboro Baptist Church? I don't know. I don't really like to rank people once they hit that level of assholery. I just like to lump them all into you're a huge asshole pot, but whatever. He says, yet one of the most important opinions from our highest court came because of WBC's assholery. I disagree with you that it's one of the most important opinions. And it's not because they actually limited it to be very narrow. They made this the narrowest decision ever. Our holding today is narrow. We are required in First Amendment cases to carefully review the record, and the reach of our opinion here is limited by the particular facts before us. This opinion has no relevance to any future cases, basically, unless the facts are identical. I mean, they try to limit this as carefully as possible. Now, of course, in every Supreme Court case, you're going to get nuggets of wisdom, but in this case, they have done their best to narrow it because, you know why? Because Westboro Baptist Church is a bunch of assholes, and even the Supreme Court doesn't want to give them legs to run on. What happened in it is Schneider, I think, their son died, and Westboro Baptist Church, the Phelps family and their church came out to protest, saying terrible things, not only about American soldiers, but about the government, etc. They're just not good people. And like auditors, they have a real problem communicating their message without being assholes about it. They just do it. They're just more effective at being assholes than auditors are. So Schneider, the parents of the dead soldier, they sued. They sued over torts, that, invasion of privacy, all sorts of various state tort claims. So the fun thing, though, is when they discuss it. And I guess I will start it here. All right. So that said, so they talk about, you could on public sidewalks, etc., and public streets and forums are the archetype of the traditional public forum, etc. So that said, even protected speech is not equally permissible in all places and at all times. Westboro's choice of where and when to conduct its picketing is not beyond the government's regulatory reach. It is subject to reasonable time, place, or manner restrictions that are consistent with the standards announced in this court's precedents. Maryland now has a law imposing restrictions on funeral picketing, as do 43 other states and the federal government. That is a direct response of the population, of the people of the United States, reacting to, recoiling from the hatred, the venom, the loathsome behavior of Westboro Baptist Church. When I said that there are consequences for being an asshole, this is a prime example of it. To the extent these laws are content neutral, they raise very different questions from the tort verdict at issue in this case. Maryland's law, however, was not in effect at the time of the events at issue here, so we have no occasion to consider how it may apply to facts such as those before us, or whether it or other similar regulations are constitutional. We have identified a few limited situations where the location of targeted picketing can be regulated under provisions that the court has determined to be content neutral. In Frisbee, which is about abortion, I think, for example, we held that a ban on such picketing before or about a particular residence. In Madsen v. Women's Health Center, we approved an injunction requiring a buffer zone between protesters and an abortion clinic entrance. So even on a public sidewalk, they can... What is footnote 5, though? I didn't read footnote 5, and I want to. The Maryland law prohibits picketing within 100 feet of a funeral service or funeral procession. Westboro's picketing would have complied with that restriction. Well, there you go. So you're going to ask now if these funeral picketing laws are constitutional. This is Nebraska's. The legislature finds families have legitimate and legally cognizable interest in organizing and attending funerals for deceased relatives, and that the rights of families to peacefully and privately mourn the death of relatives are violated when funerals are targeted for picketing or protest activities. The legislature also recommends individuals have constitutional right to free speech, and that in the context of funeral ceremonies, the competing interests of picketers and funeral participants must be balanced. Therefore, the legislature declares that for the purposes of these sections are to protect the privacy of grieving families and to preserve the peaceful character of the cemeteries, mortuaries, churches, and other places of worship during a funeral, while still providing picketers and protesters the opportunity to communicate a message at a time and place that minimizes the interference with the rights of funeral participants. So they put in various elements of it, etc. It's class 3 misdemeanor, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so the federal court upholds the funeral picketing law. This is the Nebraska one. Westboro Baptist Church vows to take it to the Supreme Court. The federal appeals court, they said it's fine. It is a time, place, and manner restriction, and there is substantial justification for it. It was constitutional. So the Supreme Court then declined the church's challenge to it, which leaves that appellate court decision in place. So as you can see, well, yes, assholery is the genesis to many Supreme Court decisions. There is a push, a resistance to assholish behavior by the community, by the population, by the people of the United States. And the bigger of an asshole you are, the more likely you are to get to the Supreme Court, but also the more likely you are to have new laws, new regulations put into place that are carefully drafted as to be constitutionally legitimate and to restrict your ability to be an asshole in the manner that you so desired to do. Anyway, that's about it. Thank you very much for watching, and I apologize about the rain, but it's not under my control. Have a great Sunday. And also remember, this afternoon there is supposed to be a political debate discussion, something between myself and First Amendment Test. So if you're interested, you could listen to it live on my Discord server, or you can always watch it afterwards on Pound Sand's YouTube channel. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.